Now we're going to discuss problems with a power supply and how to detect a faulty power supply and how to exchange a faulty power supply. But you may have noticed this caution. Never open the case of a power supply unless you've been trained on how to protect yourself from high voltage equipment. We're a lot better off to just exchange a bad power supply for a new power supply than we are to try to repair a power supply. It's contained in a case, and inside the case is the transformer. Now, the transformer can continue to hold an electrical current even after the power supply has been pulled away from the electrical power source. So it is an extremely dangerous piece of equipment if we don't know exactly what we're doing. So having said that, let's look at ways we can isolate a problem to a power supply. If the PC halts during booting, but then boots successfully after several tries, this could be a power supply problem. Any kind of intermittent problem like that could be traced back to a power supply. Error codes or beeps during booting, and the errors come and go, could be a power supply. And some BIOS will let us know that we have a power supply problem by the number of beeps. If the computer hangs for no reason at all, if memory errors appear intermittently, if data is written incorrectly to a hard drive, which would be caused by an intermittent power problem, if the keyboard stops working at odd times, the system board fails or is damaged, if the power supply itself overheats, or if the fan on the power supply stops working. These are all power supply type problems. Basically what we're looking for is something that we can directly attribute physically to the power supply, or something that is an intermittent problem that could be caused by power stoppages throughout the system. If power stops and then starts, it can create problems with all of the devices within the computer. So we should make sure that we have enough wattage to power all of the devices that are using power at the same time. In fact, it's a better idea to make sure that if the entire computer, all of the expansion slots and all of the bays were loaded with components, that the power supply in the computer has enough power to power all of those devices if they were all used simultaneously. So what we need to do is test the power supply after installing a hard drive or a CD-ROM or a new piece of equipment, or we need to estimate how much total wattage the system needs by calculating the watts for each circuit and then adding them together. Remember, we can take the voltage times the amperage for a piece of equipment and calculate the wattage. Power supplies range from 200 watts for a small desktop system to 600 watts for a tower floor model, for example, for a high-performance server. So we need to make sure that we get a power supply that meets and exceeds all of the needs for all of the devices in the computer, even if all of the devices were used simultaneously. That way, we'll make sure that we have enough of a power supply so that we would never have a problem with capacity. We also need to protect the power that is supplied to our computer, and we'll talk about that in our next